Welcome to the Expert Network Team podcast,
where our goal is to inform and educate our listeners on matters related to finance, legal, insurance, accounting, and other interests that are of personal and business nature.
We hope you will find our content useful as well as entertaining. The Expert Network Team consists of Karl Frank of A&I Financial, Mike Miller of Miller and Associates CPAs, Jeff Krommendyk of Security First Insurance Agency, and I'm Nathan Merrill. I'm an attorney at Goodspeed and Merrill.
Together, our independent team combines our expertise to provide you insights and solutions, some straightforward, some profound, for real-life opportunities we see on a daily basis. We hope you enjoy the information contained in today's podcast and find it useful. If you'd like to learn more or desire to meet with any of the Expert Network team members in person, you can contact us at info@expertnetworkteam.com. That's info@expertnetworkteam.com.
And we encourage you to take advantage of a free consultation with any of our team members. Just mention this podcast when you schedule your appointment.
Now on to today's podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to today's podcast. I'm Karl Frank, and with me today, I've got Jeff Krommendyk. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Karl. Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. And Nathan Merrill. Hi, Nate.
Hi, Karl. Thanks for the Ghirardelli.
You are so welcome. Anything to pump you up, my friend. You got it. Hey, today we're going to talk about COVID and culture and keeping our company culture alive during these COVID times. And we were just talking among the three of us beforehand, and Nate, darkly asked, would you rather run your company before COVID or after? And the unanimous decision among the three of us is, it was so much easier before COVID. So I can't wait to dive into this. How do we keep our company culture alive? How do we keep our community? How do we do things better today than what we did before? And I'm just going to let it go. So, you guys run really successful companies. You've got a lot of people that work with you, and I just look to you for advice on all sorts of ways.
And just to actually clarify that one point, because I don't think it's reasonable to think we're going to go back to how it was before. There's always going to be something, I think, that's a little different, especially in terms of how we've deployed technology in response to COVID. So there's I think before things about our culture and our communities that we want to have, but we're going to be still forced to deal with kind of the evolution of how we have those things. So I just wanted to kind of offer that clarification, because we can reminisce all the day long about how great it was, back in the glory days before, as you put it, Karl, BC, before COVID. But I don't think that will really help anybody kind of evaluate what they need to do going forward.
So true. And, we can joke about that, but that's like foreshadowing really where we're going, to say, there are some things that may be better in the future that COVID expedited. That's
the positive side that Jeff brings to this. He always sees the better in what this adversity.
It's got to be better than what we're experiencing now. I think
a true Napoleon Hill adherent. There's always opportunity in adversity.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that. I know, Karl, you introduced it before and after. We are still in it, right? So we don't exactly know what after is going to look like, but I think if we're just successful in talking about it a little bit during this session and keeping it at a very high level, I think culture is the same as it was yesterday, today, and tomorrow at a very high level, but how we execute on culture, just some of the tactics, some of the ideas, some of the things that we'll get into more detail on in a further podcast, those are the things that are changing. Culture is still, I believe, as important, and I would define it the same today as I would have a year ago, as well as what I'll define, or how I'll define it, or how we will define it next year. It's just the things that we need to do day in, day out are different, and the way that we're delivering culture potentially is going to be considerably different going on into the future. Now that we're working from home or have a hybrid type work from home type model, things like that, and some of the things that we did culturally just aren't going to be culturally acceptable nowadays versus what they were a year ago.
Or culturally probable. I mean, kind of like how we were just talking about, like, the typical seminar presentations of before COVID had a very traditional flair to them. Now, I think the expectation will be kind of an integrated
live streaming, recordings on demand.
Yeah.
Yeah, people expect a lot more out of us now, don't they? In this current COVID world.
Yeah, and as you distinguish culture, or maybe it was you, Jeff, that distinguished the culture of our workforce as compared to the culture of our clients, and how those. I mean, maybe you can speak to that at some level of being in alignment versus how they may differ. But the client base certainly has shifted its expectation in terms of how they're serviced.
Yeah, it's a lot more challenging
and
a lot of excitement too, a lot of opportunity. Well, let's start there. I mean, what is culture? Let's give it a definition. I think that'll really help. It'll help me particular. Jeff, why don't you give us kind of a baseline here to start our conversation?
Yeah, I don't know that I have a real detailed explanation. For me, it's just always been defined as kind of the personality of our company, right, or the personality of an organization. That is pretty wide spreading and reaching. It can go into a lot of different areas, but I think overall it's what do you encounter, or what do you experience when you engage a company or engage an employee or a stakeholder in that company. It's really that overall experience of that you have when engaging a company or an organization. It's kind of the personality of that company.
So culture is personality. Nate, do you have anything to add on to that?
Yeah, no, I almost wish I had Randy, our COO here, to talk on this, because he took us through our ownership group through an excellent exercise. And Jeff, you mentioned this earlier when we were talking, about the mission statement. Kind of the mission statement gives you your purpose, in a sense, and so the culture are those key principles. Or I'll use the word principles. I can't remember what he used in the system that he took us through, but the key qualities or the key principles that guide your behavior towards achieving that mission. And so things like, ethical conduct, kindness, patience, those sorts of things are probably what we would define as our culture that help us achieve our purpose or our mission statement.
Yeah, I think so. And you could ask 10 different business owners or professionals in this, in this realm, and they'll have a little bit different definition for what a vision is, a mission is, what the core values do or are supposed to do. But I think overall that's a pretty good.
Core values I think is another way to express what I was talking about. The things that are necessary, kind of fundamental underpinnings of anybody who, that's the way we approached it, was anybody who works at this firm, whether you're the receptionist or a senior attorney or a partner, we need to emphasize certain common core principles, values that support what we're trying to achieve at the firm. And we build our entire, our activities around that. We build our review process around that. Everything needs to be consistent with those core values, or we have dissonance in our messaging or dissonance in what we're trying to accomplish. If we say one thing and reward another, it doesn't work. That's a non-culture. That's kind of...
Boy, isn't that true, right? So it seems to me in the world we're living in now, it's very hard to find consistency, isn't it? Isn't it easy to stray from the core values if we're not seeing each other every day in the office?
Well, I think independence is a strong American strain. And so, someone that we've worked a lot with, a guy who works in the management training kind of field, has talked a lot about that rugged individualist. And I think rugged individualism is good to a level, but it can also run counter to creating a cohesive operating environment, that people need to understand their interdependence on others. So, and if one thing has worked against that I think that cohesiveness, it's the isolation we've all been in for the last year. And that's one of the more challenging things as I look forward, is overcoming that tendency perhaps to allow yourself to become isolated and aloof from all those things that support the organization.
That keep the team together. Yeah, isolationism is dangerous to a company culture. Oh my goodness, right? Jeff?
Yeah, that we've all experienced the results of that, I think, for sure. Moving people out of the office where we were seeing each other on a regular basis and into homes. There was clearly that was gonna be one of the big fallouts of this whole deal, which was, feeling isolated, feeling disconnected. We were talking a little bit earlier this afternoon just about the importance of connection and community, and that being kind of really the heartbeat of culture. And it's hard to do, on an email, or it's hard to do just even with a phone call. But yeah, for sure, that was one of the things that was really slated against building culture over the last 12 months, was the fact that we were physically isolated, and that was a challenge. It's
interesting when you think about it, because I've always asserted that as human beings, and this isn't my own idea, I'm sure there's some genesis of it in some college class I took or book I've read since, that humans, Homo sapiens, are social creatures at heart. Like, we are programmed to be social. And so and that's not to say that some people are introverts, some people are extroverts, but generally speaking, we need social interaction, with a few maybe extreme exceptions. And what COVID in this last year has presented to us is the physical isolation. It's the artificial desocialization of our broader culture, our broader community, not just our workforce, but churches. Heck, you went to Home Depot, you had to be, you couldn't interact with anybody. Every aspect of life seemed to be artificially stretched to the level of isolation, when our natural instincts are to need that human interaction. And so it's, I think, created a lot of stress on people as a result, where they have this, I keep using the word dissonance, where they feel in contradiction to what they want to be.
It's so true, isn't it? It's so hard to pull the people together when we're being told to stay far apart, and so many of us are fearful to even
so it generates
together.
Fear, generates feelings of guilt, perhaps, loneliness. All these things could be outgrowths. Yeah,
right?
Identity, exactly.
Community is a huge part of identity, and I loved the way you said that, Jeff, about community is the heartbeat of company culture. Great wisdom in that.
Yeah, I think it is, among many other benefits, obviously. But I think it'd be smart for us to, just maybe even bring it up another level and just kind of speak in general to culture and what really builds, or what does culture consist of. And Nate mentioned it a little bit. I really love that he brought that to the table here just a minute ago. But it really begins with understanding clearly who you are as a company, and then when you know that, it's pretty easy to understand who you aren't as well. And it really creates this identity almost for the organization that really sets out to really let the public know not only what we do and what we set out to accomplish and how we set out to necessarily serve our clients, but really what we stand for, what we believe in, and more importantly, how we're going to go ahead and do that. And when a company has a very clear picture of their vision, their mission, and their core values, and even, I would say, their operating system or their operating culture with regards to meeting rhythms, meeting structure, what's required of employees, it really kind of creates this full package that regardless of who you are and how you are engaging that company, whether you're engaging it from a customer perspective, from an employee perspective, from a vendor perspective, whatever aspect that you are approaching this company with, you know exactly who they are, and you're also going to know that I will potentially fit or I won't fit. And so it's really this really clear definition around the identity of who the company is in every aspect of what they do, whether they're building products or delivering services. And it really helps create an incredible amount of clarity around what kind of client we're looking for, what kind of employee we're looking for, what kind of a vendor we're looking for. And it really creates, as I said earlier before we started recording, it creates this knot hole that we can pull absolutely every decision through, including what kind of products we're going to sell, what kind of services we're going to provide, what kind of people we're going to hire, what kind of vendors we're going to partner with. It really makes the whole decision-making process around everyday or even strategic type decisions much easier once we understand more clearly who we are and who we aren't.
Wow, there's a lot in there. Culture is identity.
Yeah, so I'm gonna take your identity discussion and maybe raise it a level and see what you have to say about this. So, I mean, obviously we're not multiple personality disorder people, but we have multiple identities, right? So there's a hierarchy, or I would suggest perhaps there's a hierarchy of identities, and this doesn't relate specifically to corporate identity, but I think it's important for us, especially as business owners, to understand that people have a hierarchy of identity. They may view themselves as something before an employee of Goodspeed and Merrill.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, well, in some cases that may really be one of the more significant things in their lives. We all pass through different doors at different times, and we have different levels of identity adherence or whatever. But you're somebody's son or daughter, so presumably that hopefully takes some precedence. Or
Absolutely.
Once you leave your parents' home or your parents' care or whatever, you become a husband, a father,
a friend.
You have all these identities that are primary to before you get to, some people it's their organizations they belong to, churches, that sort of thing. All those things could obviously be identities that presuppose or are primary to their work identity. And
that's fan. So a Utah Jazz fan.
Yeah,
you got to forgive him.
Even me, as an owner of a business, I can list probably half a dozen things, maybe a dozen, that I identify myself as before I get to Goodspeed and Merrill. And that is, I think, a challenge, and this is what I think you can speak to a little bit, is how do we recognize all that divergence, all that diversity that comes into play before we even get to the culture we're trying to build? Does that make sense? I mean, do you have to have... I assume diversity in those different priorities of identity help create a really interesting mix in the workforce, but it also can create potential conflicts or prioritization problems, that sort of thing. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I'm following you there, Nate. I mean, and all the more reason and importance of understanding what it is that we're looking for. Because people do bring a lot of identity. They bring a lot of, let's just face it, baggage. They bring a lot of, things that actually make up who they are. And as a result, even of past experiences, they're looking for something specific, even in our organization, that they can connect to and that they can fit into. And so I think that's a big consideration that we always take into consideration, obviously, when hiring, knowing who we are and knowing what type of a profile of a person or an identity fits into our organization is first and foremost. We would actually say that we weight at least 90% of our candidates on culture fit versus competency. Now, we assume that they're coming to us able to read and able to do the, typical functions that they would be applying for a position at our company in. But we do feel that culture fit and personality fit, identity fit is way more important than any skills that they would bring to the company. We feel like we could and can and will train them into the competency side of the organization, but we cannot change who people are. And that, therefore, that identity fit is extremely important.
So I'm going to ask you a question. What are the culture pitfalls? Like what just to give you a couple of examples to think about, can a business try to create too much culture? Can you culture overreach? Can you try to expect too much from that identification principle of like, here's what we want you to feel and be as an employee here, and that's just like, whoa, I don't need all that. How do you find a balance in terms of what people are, or is that just where you say it's not a culture fit? This person just doesn't want to be invested in us as much as we need him to be who we want to be?
Yeah, really a great question, and my mind is going several different directions. But in a interview process, and even if it's, we talk a lot about our employees being a big part of our culture, but we interview clients from this perspective. We try to get a feel for what the client's going to expect or demand from us, as well as a vendor, and so on and so forth. So this is not just an employee or a stakeholder situation. This is kind of goes across the board. But Nate, I would say that we spend a lot of time educating a prospective employee as to who we are. We do that in the interview process, and we let them know specifically what would be expected of them with regards to fitting into our culture. And we will typically see people or be able to identify people that probably would or would not be a fit just based on how they react to the amount of meetings that we're going to expect, the amount of participation that we're going to expect them to give with regards to how we serve our community, with regards to what our expectation would be of them maybe one night a month to go and have dinner or have happy hour or something like that, or a retreat every year. These are things that they need to know before they sign up with us. And therefore, if that's just too much, and they're more about something else, then they'll get a feel for that. The last comment I want to make as it relates to that question, Nate, is just one of the many great quotes that Jim Collins actually shared with the world through one of his books called Good to Great, which we've all read, and it's kind of like the Bible on our shelf, right? And he said, and reminds us constantly that culture will eat strategy for breakfast, right? And so when you talk about the balance of where our attention as business owners should be and the amount of effort that we should put into like strategy versus culture, I think that statement speaks volumes, because so much actually comes out of culture, including strategy, including execution, including performance. But if there was ever a chicken or an egg, or a cart before the horse, I mean, in this particular case, culture will drive everything.
Gentlemen, this is a great conversation, and I've learned so much about culture and feel so much better because I feel like as a business owner myself, running a small business, I spend a lot of time on the business, more than I thought, and especially in the COVID world, it just is taking a lot more effort to hold us all together to build that community, and I really appreciate your insights and support.
Yeah, and I think one thing that has to be recognized about culture, because it is an often used word, sometimes appropriately, sometimes probably just, token, in a token sense, is that an honest to goodness focus on culture is a devotion to your employees and these people that we are serving. I mean, it is more than just creating a cohesive environment. It's really because I think we all feel that as our culture excels, people are happier. They are better employees. They produce better. The overall, it's a service to them to have the culture we're trying to to instill. It's not just us trying to get them to conform or something. We're trying to create an environment where they're happy.
Yes, that's exactly right. A lot of talk about that right now, and there has been for many, many years. But employee engagement is an incredible statistic that really reminds us each day that we've got to keep one foot in the culture mix at all times. We really, really do. Otherwise, we'll have a bunch of disengaged employees and even employees that are working against where we're headed. So culture is the driver of that.
Culture is a devotion. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Nate. This is a great, great episode. I greatly appreciate it and look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed the information we shared.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please feel free to share it with someone else. And join us next time.
If you want to meet with a member of the team, please contact us at info@expertnetworkteam.com. That's info@expertnetworkteam.com.
If you have special topics you'd like to hear about, please reach out to us and let us know at the same email address. Again, that's info@expertnetworkteam.com. Thank you for joining us and have a great day. Thank you for listening to this podcast. We want to remind you that listening to this podcast does not establish a client-professional relationship with any of the firms represented, nor does it constitute legal, investment, or accounting advice, and the views are those of the professionals only.
Investment advisory services may be provided through A&I Financial Services, and securities may be provided through Genios Wealth Management.